When you think about the wealthiest people of the world, the first people who came to mind are Bill Gates, Jeff Bezos, Warren Buffett, or even this guy, Mark Zuckerberg. But the problem is that these rankings are made based on the publicity available informations, and it doesn't include people who are much wealthier than even Jeff Bezos. Take an example of the Crown Prince of the Saudi Arabia, or MBS as he is known more famously. At 34 years old, he bought a yacht for the $500 million, a French charter or the $30 million. And for the desert, he purchased $450 million Leonardo da Vinci painting. Even people just like Jeff Bezos, who have been dominating for Forbes lists for a few years, now would struggle to raise so much cash to make such extravagant purchase. It might sound like I am talking about some kind of the conspiracy theory, but trust me, I'm not. In this video, we are going to explore the five type of the rich people and why Jeff Bezos isn't the richest person in the world. Why the real billionaires are hiding behind the curtains and would never want to be seen, and the top of the Forbes list. Let's start with the poorest type of the rich people. I know that sentences is quite controversial, but believe it or not, we have a whole segment of the rich people who appear to a Forbes lists and all the time, but don't even have the few millions dollars. They are known as the paper rich. They founded the company in the Silicon Valley. The company seems promising. It might be successful in the future, so investors, banks, and the financial institutions in general would gladly lend them the cash they needed to get that positions and start earning money. Pretty much every startup is every silicon is like that. The company might have the great products with hundreds of the employees, but it burns money that it brings. In fact, some of the largest companies are still running like that, like Uber, Lyft, and even Amazon. As recently as a few years ago, Amazon reported its first profitable quarter just in 2018. So all of these people might claim to be multimillionaire or billionaire, but in reality, they probably can't even pay the rent. That's why they all strive to become level 2 rich. Even if one day your startup suddenly becomes popular and your net worth on paper will be, let's say, $5 billion, here's the step-by-step guide how to turn your $5 billion on the paper to actual cash. First, do your best to create a hype around your app and boost its evaluations, and then take it public. During the IPO, since a lot of the people will be willing to invest into your company, sell a portion of your stake, but not too much, since that will devalue your net worth. Let's 5 to 10%. Congrats, now you have $250 million in real money. Go and get yourself the mansion for the 20 millions, a supercar you always dreamed about, to keep the few $1 million in your account for emergency cases, and the rest invest into the many different stable companies that actually turned a point. Forbes might estimate your net worth at around $5 billion, but to perfectly known that's not real. All you have is just a few $100 million of real wealth. Take an example of the Evan Spiegel. As of 2020, his net worth was $4.3 billion. He should also be able to buy the yacht for the $500 million and the mansion in France for the $300 million, especially since he holds French citizenship. But he can't. This $4.3 billion is only on paper from his stakes in Snapchat. In practice, he can't even get half of that. Snapchat is a huge company and makes a lot of the money, but Snapchat has never made a profit. It has been 2 years since it went public. With 218 million users, it's valued at around $31.5 billion, and Ivan's net worth primarily comes from his 18% stakes in the company. So even though he is the billionaire, he can't afford $500 million yacht like MBS. Of course, you can argue that he can suddenly sell his shares and raise billions of the dollars in the cash, right? Theoretically, yeah, but in practice, not really. If he suddenly sells a large portion of his stakes, there will be the oversupply of the Snapchat shares in the market and will drive the price down, which means his net worth will be much lower. On the top of that, if the founder and the person who runs Snapchat will suddenly start selling his shares, investor will lose confidence in the company. They might decide to sell their shares as well, which can result in the crash of the entire company. Jeff Bezos, who is the richest person in the world according to the Forbes, is also in this category. Let's say you have had successful IPO and raised hundreds of millions of dollars. How do you turn the other $4.75 billion net worth into the real values? There is your step-by-step guide. Keep growing your company, but at the same time sell a small portion of your shares every single year and invest them into the many profitable companies. In 10 to 15 years, you will successfully diversify your portfolio and will no longer be as the cashless billionaire. The best example of someone who successfully did this is Bill Gates. He is famously known for the building Microsoft, but today Microsoft makes only a small percentage of his portfolio. In fact, his biggest stake is Berkshire Hathaway, a conglomerate that holds many different companies under his wings. So, if Microsoft shares suddenly drop, his wealth won't be affected at all, since his wealth comes from the many different companies from all around the world and from the many different industries. Another example is Travis Kalanick, a founder of the Uber. Uber has been around since 2009, but it still hasn't turned a point, and in 2018 it went public. Travis Kalanick, one of the founders of the company, slowly sold off almost his entire stakes and diversified his portfolio even before the company made a dime in profit. What could be better than having the net worth of the $5 billion that's diversified into the many different companies, where invested alone probably brings you around $500 million. You don't have to touch the principal wealth at all, because interest alone will provide you unbelievable lavish life. However, the next type of the rich people are one step ahead, and they are heads of states. In many countries around the world, some individuals rise to power and then consolidate the power around themselves and hold on to it until the end of their lives. And while they are in power, they have the entire wealth of the nations of the despotel. Yes, of course, you might have to argue journalists throwing at all uncomfortable questions, but you can always use that wealth to prevent that from happening. Take an example of the former Libyan president Gaddafi, who had estimated net worth of the $200 billion, or the president of the Russia, who is powered by the 20 years already and recently changed the constitution for the country to stay in power up to another 20 years. The entire nation has to pay taxes, and you can do with that cash whatever you wish. To the profits from the natural resources will be under your country. You can have as many private jets as you wish, or yachts, or whatever else you desire. But this type of wealth is not sustainable. At some point, the people of your country will get bored with you and would protest to replace you. And the Arab Spring is a perfect example of that, where many heads of the states that were running their nations for the 30 or 40 years were overthrown and replaced. Qatar is an oil-rich country that has probably the highest GDP per capita in the world. Emir Tamim bin Hamid Al sultan rules it. The constitutions of this oil-rich country basically says the emir or the head of the country can only be chosen from the family of the Al Tawin, and he is the head of the state and commander or in chief of the Qatar armed forces and commander of the constitutions. So no matter what he does, how much money he spends, and how many places and the private jets he buys, he can't be taken down. He can spend the nation's wealth as he desires. But most importantly, his son or one of his sons will be the next king of Qatar. And that is the ultimate level of the wealth, where you own the entire country. The Qatar isn't the only example. Saudi Arabia, UAE, Jordan are the neighborhood countries with similar structure of power. In the UK, the Queen is the head of the states and commander-in-chief of the Britain Armed Forces, and the government of the United Kingdom is known as Her Majesty's Government. She might not control the government directly, but the taxpayers still have to pay for her lavish life and her entire family's expenses that are not cheap, and annoying born into his family will automatically be super wealthy. You can find similar examples in other European countries, in Africa, Asia, and pretty much in every continent. Royal blood is considered privileges, and people for one reason or another in the general would treat you as someone blessed by God himself if you are linked to a royal family. That's why history is filled with examples of the royal dynasties. People respect and admire royal families and consider them upper class citizens. That's it for this video. If you want to support our channel, check out our Patreon. And other than that, just give this video the thumbs up and subscribe to if you are new around here. Thanks for watching, and until next time.